I also want to welcome Sherry Cushman from Cushman Wakefield for giving us this presentation this morning. Sherry, I believe you've got a quick introduction for us, about 20 minutes of presentation, and then but folks are welcome to chat in at any time with questions in the Q&A or in the chat feature. I don't have a formal sponsor this week, so I'm just going to pitch the Practice Law Conference coming up in November. Sign up your teams now. We're giving away prizes. We're going to do a Shark Tank style pitch for an alternative legal service provider. If your team wins, you get a nice mention of Bench and Bar, plus some Amazon gift cards. We're also giving away the legal keypad, all kinds of fun stuff. So get registered for that. Sherry, I will let you take it away.
Great. It's saying, Mike, that I can't start my screen while you're sharing. So you're gonna have to exit out there, and then I'll be able to share my screen. There we go. Share screen. Share. And let's go into full view. First, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. I told Mike and Landon that I am actually sitting in sunny Sarasota, Florida, where I have a blazer on, but I have flip-flops and shorts on. It's 80 some degrees and beautiful today. And I'm sure many of you are laughing as well, because you may not be sitting in your office in Minneapolis right now. My guess is that some of you are home, some of you are out of state, but we're definitely in a new time. And I had the good fortune this past Monday of being in Austin, Texas. And I was the keynote at the Association of Legal Administrators conference. They had 1,300 people from firms, large and small. Many of your firms probably were represented as well. And I had 90 minutes to really do a deep dive into how real estate is being looked at very, very differently. How firms are completely evaluating the return to the office, short-term, long-term. How all of this is affecting not only recruiting and retention, but succession planning and budgeting and tech budgets and real estate budgets. It's a whole new ballgame right now. And when we first went into COVID, March of 20, we had our heads spinning. And I do work with law firms all around the world. I've worked with many law firms there in Minneapolis. And I will tell you that in my 37 years of doing this, I've never seen such drastic change. COVID has truly put the legal sector ahead a decade. And I think it's a great thing. And I think many firms are really looking at this opportunity as not a scary opportunity, but a really exciting opportunity to affect change in a way that had we not had a pandemic, we wouldn't be able to. It was a forced beta test of human nature, of how people think and work differently, particularly a sector that, generally speaking, was very slow moving and very old school. So this is all about the pathway to the future. And what if the office is actually more important now than ever? May not be as big, may be redesigned. There may be workplace implementations like hoteling and more remote working, expanded technology and Zoom rooms and things that we didn't even know about 2 years ago. But it really is more important now than ever, because it still is the base of culture, where people need to come and collaborate, how and where we train, and how we have that human interaction. So I want to give you just a quick synopsis across the country, because these statistics are going to give you a very good sense of how the sector is reacting. And I want to preface it with every market is different and unique. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And what's first driving people making decisions today is what is happening with their own firm, what is driving the business. Did COVID help it? Did it hurt it? Pre-COVID, were there high vacancy rates? Were there issues and pain points that needed to be addressed? Now there's that much more. And then also what's going on in independent market. So when we wrapped up 2020 and then the first half of 2021, the industries that were leading the pack in leasing activity across the United States are technology, financial services, and healthcare. They're killing it. And they comprise the majority of the leasing activity. Across the United States, legal sector activity is down significantly. Why? because the legal sector still hasn't figured out the return to the office yet. So they're sitting and waiting. Now, that doesn't mean deals aren't being done. There are many transactions being done that firms are taking advantage of market conditions. They're doing restructures and give backs with 5, 6, 7, 8 years left on leases. They're looking at the debt and equity on buildings and ownerships and the risk that they're in. And if it makes sense, taking advantage and capitalizing on markets where not only are they saving money early, but more importantly, they're reinventing themselves and not waiting 5, 6 years to do it. And that in itself is going to assist them in a lot of positive recruiting and retention. So this looks like a big chart, but it's really not. The gray represents where vacancy rates were pre-COVID in all these cities, tertiary and primary. When you look at the white portion above, that is the increase above current vacancy rates pre-COVID. So you can see markets like Austin, Texas, Boston, San Francisco, all of a sudden had a vacancy that was here that leapt up. Almost in every case, this is because massive sublease space has been dropped on the market by tenants that don't need space. People are not renewing leases and are either moving out of the city, downsizing, or simply saying, I don't need office space anymore. So that variable is on top of the existing vacancy rate. So we have seen in markets that were hovering at 5%. Look at Austin, they were 5, 6%. They shot up to 25% overnight. In rare cases, it's because new product was under construction and it's delivering now and nobody's signing up for it yet. So across the United States, you can see in the center, we were hovering at an average of 12% national, and it's gone up 6% on average. But you can see the variable. Now, what's interesting is about legal sector leasing activity. This chart on the left, this basically says that where were we in 19? There was 7.3 million square feet of leasing activity. This is tertiary markets, top 10 markets. Then look at what happened in 2020. It reduced, and then there was less in tertiary markets. But then we're into 2021. It's almost a 50-50 split of activity, still down significantly from 7.3 to only 4.4, but there's been more activity in the tertiary markets. Why? Because there's been great opportunities in tertiary markets for people to do things early. And the smaller markets, what we call the non-vertical markets, Minneapolis is not one of them because you have high rises. But if you're in a market where public transportation isn't a necessity, most people drive, they're not getting to 30, 40, 50-story buildings and having to take elevators and go through a lot of touching and feeling throughout to get to the office. So it's the tertiary non-vertical markets, non-public transportation dependent markets that are actually more active than not. Well, so you can see sector leasing is down 28%. But what is also significant is the square footage that people are taking. We've seen a fundamental decrease by anywhere from 19 to 50% across the United States when people are renewing and or relocating. So you can see on average 19%. So when you're looking at new leases versus renewals, but more importantly, the under 50,000 square feet versus above 50,000, if it's a new lease, the reduction actually is about the same, regardless of over 50,000 or under 50,000. So if you're 25,000, where it's interesting, however, is on renewals. So that is, I think, really saying a lot. If I stay, what can I do to make my space more efficient? So we grab this national chart. These were all deals that have been done across the United States, primary and tertiary markets, renewals versus subleases versus new leases. And the column that it matters here is you can see reductions of 13 to 64%. Now, of course, you need to understand the baseline of where these firms were to start. Were they over 1,000 square feet per attorney and they right-sized to what is more trending, which is under 500 square feet per attorney? Did they have excess space that they never filled? So there's definitely, you need to understand the baseline. But also, in some cases, these firms made the decision to do significant workplace changes where maybe 50, 60% of their attorneys are remote working 2 to 3 days a week, and then they're hoteling when they come in. I was just telling Mike, we're working with a firm in Denver right now that 50% of the partners in the last 6 months, as we're doing a real estate transaction, willfully agreed to give up their office permanently. It doesn't mean they don't have an office when they go, but they're like, I don't need my big office. I'm only planning on coming in 1 or 2 days a week. So you can see how this dynamic changes, not only at your real estate needs, but your support needs, your technology needs, your staff needs across the board. So COVID year was one of the most profitable and phenomenal financial years in the history of the legal sector. Globally, $730 billion of revenue was earned. In the US, it was $348 billion. That is greater than the revenue for Amazon, Apple, and Alphabet combined in the same year. The sector's continuing to grow. The sector's continuing to make money. And a lot of firms really thought their profits were going to be significantly hit in 2020. And because of cost cutting, layoffs, and revenue that either maintained or actually elevated, the majority of firms actually saw major increases in revenue. So the challenge going into 21, 22, 23 is how do we maintain that? Was just that a fluky year that we made a ton of profit? And how do we then rethink it moving forward? Because pre-pandemic, your top 3 expenses historically has always been salaries number 1, real estate number 2, and technology number 3. Now we're into COVID. This is what's happened. For many firms, technology has hit the number 1, 2 position and may very well stay in that position for the years ahead. How do you drive down real estate costs that average nationally 6% of gross revenue, but have a delta from 4% to 13%? And how do we have additional expanded technology, just not the physical technology, but the people we have to hire to train? So it's a lot of technology investments. So I had the pleasure of doing a global WebEx in late May, and I had 500 plus US firms. Some of you may have been on the presentation. And we did a live poll, and we said, due to COVID and legal sector shifts, in the future, do you anticipate your firm's workplace to change? 93% said yes. 24% said we are drastically going to change our workplace moving forward. And 69% said we plan to make incremental change. And obviously incremental can vary, but only 7% said, I'm not doing anything. I worry about those 7% because this change is here. It's permanent. The challenge, however, is figuring out to what degree is right for your individual firm. It's no longer a, let's see what everybody else does and we'll follow. And it's not a one size fits all. You know, the need of a IP attorney versus a litigator versus a real estate attorney or a bankruptcy attorney, the physical need, the physical office space, the technology, everything else is very different. And so a lot of firms are embracing that and saying, I'm going to give my attorneys and my staff the space they need and the technology they need, and not worry about that I've got a one size fits all solution. So what are firms doing? What strategies in this calendar year to maintain and increase profits? Number 1, record more laterals to strengthen existing practice areas. We all know it. You probably all lost people to other firms. The mega big law firms are reaching down to the small to mid-sized firms and rating them, both staff and legal talent. Remaining stable and building business from within. Take the clients and the people we have and build that. And also facilitate growth through expansion. I do a lot of work with some of the top 20 firms. I just got a call yesterday out of nowhere. Hey, Sherry, we want to open up an office in Salt Lake City. 10 new firms have come to Salt Lake during COVID. Chicago is a crazy growing legal sector market because it's smack in the middle of the country. So you have a strong IP practice on the West Coast and something strong in the East Coast, they want it in the middle. So we are seeing the entire dynamic of the legal sector completely shift. And another area we're seeing a major shift is what associate priorities are. For 5 years straight, compensation has been number one. So we all know that associate salaries have raised significantly, particularly at Big Law, but it's no longer number one. And we saw a fundamental shift with associates that really the priority for them is the areas of practice. I want to practice some type of law that I'm passionate about and I love. I want to collaborate with the other attorneys. But by the way, that doesn't mean I want to come to the office 5 days a week. You can collaborate without being physically present, and firms are doing it and doing it well. And the reputation of the firm. And while money has dropped significantly and still important, other things, and COVID is really reprioritized for many people, old and young, what is most important to them. Retirement was number one in COVID year. That was typically 3, 4, 5 on the list. In-house counsel opportunities actually went up on a national basis, but down in select firms. Used to be the number one reason for departure of most firms. And compensation actually went down. But what increased? Why did attorneys leave? Is they were terminated. A very close evaluation of the bottom 20% of performers that aren't performing to the level that firms need them to, and they're dragging down the people that are profitable, and they're letting them go, whether they end up somewhere else or they retire early. 57% of firms said that they're—
do we know,
Yeah.
sorry, wanted to interrupt 100 times and I finally broke.
Go ahead, Mike.
On that termination piece, do you know by any chance what the, how much it has risen? Is it a statistically significant or?
Significantly. Over the last 5 years, we have seen it grow exponentially, and it took a big blip in 2020, because I like to say that, imagine your law firm as a ball. And that ball was always, closely evaluated, but COVID forced people to tear that ball to pieces and evaluate individual partner P&Ls, put line items on a P&L like real estate, instead of it's a line item of, our second highest expense is just a line item in our budget. It shouldn't be. It should be, you're an equity partner, you're not, and if you're a one-off firm or you're a national or global firm, you need to know what your true costs are and what your obligation as a partner is. And when firms are getting more and more businesslike and more transparent about these types of things, all of a sudden people are looking very differently. So Bob, that used to be a $5 million business generator, and Susie, who was 3 million, now that they're looking at Bob's expenses, and he uses a lot of paralegals and associates, and he's got a big expense account and this, and this, his net profit may be less than Susie's on 3 million. So then all of a sudden you've got a whole comp restructure. And Bob's not happy about it because he's had his kimono like this, and now the kimono's open and everybody knows. There are some firms that you can log in 24/7 and see any partner's P&L at that moment in time. It's not comfortable. Partners hate it. But the ones that are actually producing and streamlining and really doing well are like, wait a minute over here. So all of these things, greater transparency, treating it more like a business, and what it's done is it's really brought to the surface the underperformers. And so they might give them a year, 6 months, give them training, but a lot, particularly the retirement reason, is a lot of them are like, you know what, I was going to retire in the next 3, 5, 6 years anyway. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore, which is why it was number one during COVID year.
Thank you.
So technology spend drastically increased. Pre-COVID, the average was 2.5% of gross revenue. Now it's 5 to 7, above 7, 57% are spending more than 5% on it as well. Where are they spending it? To no surprise, network remote working capabilities and security of information. Staffing has gone up exponentially, but the bottom two soared: artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. It's a little scary, but that's where people are putting their money.
And one of the questions is, how much of this is an adjustment here. You know, how many people had to set up their home office and, okay, well, I need to get a different computer here. I need to get a different server, backup monitors.
Yep.
You
Well,
know, so is that going to continue?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. So obviously there was an exponential increase, and it really depended upon where your baseline was. You know, a lot of people were in great tech position already. Everybody had laptops. They already had the cloud set up. Everything was really ready to go, and it was just a matter of shifting. Others, however, were not prepared. You know, some firms still had desktops, and so they had to spend exponentially more. But moving forward, it is absolutely anticipated that there will be a continuation as technology will always continue to expand. There's going to be a continued investment in staffing and training and actual technology of laptops and screens at home and everything else. And a lot of firms did give people budgets, you know, an allocation, $2,500, whatever, to go buy what they needed, printers, et cetera, for home. Some firms that came off of phenomenal years spent millions of dollars buying every single one of their people, including, you know, staff, employees, back office, brand new laptops. So it will continue to escalate. It may bump to like 8% and then stabilize at 5 or 6% as real estate costs are being driven down.
I was super surprised, and I apologize. I was just reading into the chat here too, so apologize if I missed this. But I was surprised to learn that those categories had swapped real estate and technology. That blows my mind.
Well, and not for everyone yet. There might be a quick blip, but what people are doing is as they're making their real estate decisions and driving maybe a 7% gross revenue to real estate down to a 4%. By reallocating and implementing some of these workplace strategies like desk sharing and hoteling and virtual remote working, and looking at, you know, some component of staff that you can comfortably say never needs to come back. And so you saw those reductions. So say you can reduce your real estate costs from 7% to 4%, and your technology costs that hovered at 3 or 4 to 6 or 7, because you can't do this stuff without technology.
Right. Well, I guess that was my question, is that the increase in spending on the prior slide are categories, it's not cost, I guess. So
correct.
So what is the what's real? Is it the pandemic and remote work that's driving the increase, or is it?
Well, it was the pandemic that was a forced test to see if people could remote work. If the pandemic didn't take place, nobody would be doing what they're doing, and also adapting in a way that they're now comfortable. I run a group call every Monday of 150 of I have 300 brokers worldwide. 150 consistently get on the call every Monday, and they tell us what their clients are thinking and they're doing. The first 3 to 6 months, their heads were spinning and they were running around like with chickens lay with their heads cut off. What's going on? For the first question was, do I have to pay rent anymore? Well, yeah, you do. Unfortunately. The second was, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not trained well enough. I don't have the right equipment. I've gone to the office for 30 years. This is not working for me. And magically, somewhere between months 4 and 6 around the globe, we saw calming. And we saw a fundamental shift where firms that were surveyed that said my productivity is down, it then neutralized, and then it started going up. National stats, the surveys we do show, generally speaking, productivity is either equal to or increased. Decreased is minimal. Minimal. So as you're adapting, and I'm sure psychologists, psychiatrists could have a field day with understanding what was that magic 4 to 6 month with lawyers. That's the amount of time it took. Generally speaking, it's 60 days. So all of a sudden we started seeing this, and like this firm in Denver that half the partners gave up their offices. They now adapted in a new way where they're enjoying getting up in the morning potentially and doing their morning run and taking their dog out and bringing their kids to school and stopping midday for 2 hours for a hike or whatever it may be, and to be able to do it anywhere. I mean, I've always worked remotely because I travel so much, but I spent 6 weeks in Annapolis and a month in Utah this summer to get out of the Florida heat. And you know what? I didn't miss a beat. And my title, I'm 37 years in the business, I'm a vice chairman. I'm entitled to a big corner office. I don't have one anywhere. So 65% of firms are planning on double-digit increases over the next 2 years. You can see here where the median is. So 11 to 25, 51% of firms said we anticipate 11 to 25% increase. Some are saying lots more, 35% are saying a lot less. But this I found fascinating. And again, this was 500 firms that responded. Some of you on this call may have participated as well. And this was a little shocking, but it's consistent with our confidential surveys that we do for our law firm clients. This is now the big national survey. Of the partners, 88% of the firms said we anticipate our partners will only return 1, 2, 3 days a week. Majority. Only 4% said they're not coming in at all. 6% said 4 days. Only 3% said I'm coming back 5 days a week. Associates, 85%, 1 to 3 days a week. And isn't this interesting how these are almost identical to what the partner said? So the challenge now is making sure that the people that need to be in together are all in together on the same day, and that it's not ad hoc mentoring. It's a planned, managed, organized time. So when people come to the office, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, they're getting that mentorship. They're getting that training. They're getting that, love of being with one another. And it's really impacting it. So the current return to the office
regarding
right now,
that, quick question regarding that previous
Sure.
slide there.
Mhm.
What size were those law firms?
Every size.
Okay. I mean, because
Every
obviously if you're talking, I'm a solo practitioner. So you're
Yeah.
asking me about, solo practitioner coming into the office. I'm always at the office because I am the office.
Exactly.
So little bit different
Yep.
mindset there. And I was kind of wondering if there was more of a breakdown or if you
Well,
saw any trends
this
larger.
survey was 55% non-AM 100 or 200 firms. So the 55% comprises of any size firm, one-off, regional, that's not a ranked 100 or 200. So 45% were AM 100, 200, 55% were anything other than that fell into this category. So this is relevant to anybody on this call, whether you're a 5 attorney firm or a 500 attorney firm, or even a 2,000 attorney firm. So the current return to the office essentials, we were all gung-ho ready to get back after Labor Day. Everybody was. And then obviously, Delta came around, and it's pushed many return to the office to January. That doesn't mean people aren't coming to the office. They're definitely coming in higher percentages in tertiary markets and non-vertical public transportation markets. But in the top 10 markets, and Mike, you said, you come downtown and it's kind of a ghost town, and it's that way in Philly, it's that way in DC, it's New York's starting to come back. But when it comes to the legal sector, we're still looking at only about on average a 10 to 20% return rate.
So when we're talking about the legal sector, I know the last one was talking about, I assume all private firms. We had one question that came up. What about government attorney offices? Have you seen any data on that?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I am currently representing the Legal Services Corporation, which houses the Office of the Attorneys General. And they have not been in the office yet. I did a vision session with them last week with the Attorneys General. And without breaching any confidentiality, they really don't want to come back to the office. So what also, I'm sorry, Mike?
I was just saying, government agencies, big lessees, are they leasing?
Massive, market by market, they occupy on a percentage basis the largest percentage of real estate in Washington, DC.
I believe you.
Well, law firms are number 2. Nonprofits and associations are number 3. They're 60 million square feet in DC alone. DC, not DC metro area, downtown DC. So you can imagine then how that affects retail, hotels, dry cleaners, mom and pop sandwich shops, restaurants, the metro, security. In Minneapolis, you know the short and long-term effects.
I was wondering, the change way back, prior slide, I think had 6%. What was the category there? I was wondering, the question to raise is that the legal sector is a huge percentage of the occupying space in most downtown.
That was not occupiable space. That was activity.
Yeah.
Leasing activity, showing that law firm activity was down because a lot of firms are waiting to see. The other thing that we saw a lot of is short-term renewals. You know, law firms normally do 10, 15-year deals. We saw a year renewal, 2-year renewal, 3-year renewal, so they can buy time. What we have seen, however, though, in the last 2 quarters is definitely some activity where firms are taking advantage of opportunities. And if you can get, you know, I was just mentioning in Phoenix, you know, average Phoenix vacancy rates like 24%. This particular law firm had 4 floors. They had a very high vacancy rate of attorneys that they thought they would hire and fill vacancies. They've accepted the fact that we don't ever need that space because we will never be able to recruit 60 attorneys in this market. So let's right size but with 2 things. 1, accepting the fact we're never filling those seats. There's just not enough talent here to do that. And number 2, let's now implement new workplace strategies. So our 130,000 feet we only needed 60. We had 5 years left on our lease. We thought we could do nothing. We did a very deep dive into the ownership. That particular building was very tight, didn't have much vacancy, but the portfolio of the owner had high vacancy rates across the United States. It's a REIT. They don't look at it as one market. They look at it as the return on the REIT. So we approached the ownership and we said, we really do want to stay, but we only need 60,000 feet. And we know we have 5 years left, but we need 2 years to gut and renovate those 2 floors to reinvent ourselves. And then we want to give back 3 floors. And they did. They accepted it. And we did a transaction and put $20 million back in the firm's pocket. And by the way, no out-of-pocket capital, because the landlord gave us so many concessions, free rent, tenant improvements, that there was no out-of-pocket capital required to reinvent themselves 5 years before and save $20 million. Almost all the transactions that I'm personally working on, whether it's Chicago, San Diego, Minneapolis, New York, tertiary markets, New Jersey, we're seeing really creative transactions done. And we're not saying that can be done for you, but factors that have never been taken into consideration before, primarily your own business drivers, it's worth pursuing to see if there's an opportunity. And if there's not, sit and wait.
So do those deals have any impact on other tenants? I mean, don't most commercial leases have like lease up provisions which say that now you're spreading the operating expenses around?
Yeah. Well, most people have operating provisions that if the building is, you know, if I'm the only tenant in the building, there's still a 95% gross up as if tenants were there. I'm not paying for the other vacancy. And it's the landlord's risk. Hence why I'd rather keep you at 60 and have 2 years to release the 70 than not. So local market conditions and regulations, you know, Washington, D.C. is a perfect example how the mayor most recently put back on mask restrictions. What had happened to occupancy rates? It would dip back down again because people are like, if I have to wear a mask everywhere, including sitting in my own office, I'm going to stay at home. Building readiness. Has your building really done a top to bottom evaluation of everything from cleanliness to security to every single thing that needs to be reevaluated? We just got an RFP from a law firm in New York that wants to hire us for facilities management and maintenance. Now, they have a great landlord that has cleaning and security, but they want to superfy it. And they want to use it as one of their many recruiting tools by saying to every employee and attorney who works there is the building's going to take it to this level, but we're going to take it to this level because we love you and care about your safety and your health so much that it's going to be like a biotech research facility. It's going to be so clean. So firms do a lot of things to just entice people to come back to work and to steal talent. Office readiness, circulation, sanitizing, vaccine status. I've heard of one firm so far, one of my clients, that has said to their staff and their attorneys, if you are not fully vaccinated, now it's October 1, you will not have a job. And there's a tiny little box of health exceptions, but they're like, it's that simple. You want to work here, you get vaccinated. Most firms won't do that. But if you do come in, I mean, Cushman Wakefield has a vaccination policy. If you don't get vaccinated, the restrictions on you are so cumbersome that they're hoping that it affects people to get vaccinated. So here's where we are, the new workplace. This is going to evolve beyond what we know today. We're sitting in the center in this kind of orange circle right now. We're looking at hybrid working pilots, as people slowly return, things like hot desking and hoteling and desk sharing and more remote working, and looking at staff and even some attorneys that may not come in other than to come in to collaborate. So we're about to see in the next couple of years, the next two, what are the new workplace norms? What are the best practices at scale? And one thing is for sure, it's not going to be everybody doing the same thing. The office still is the center stage. It still is the home base and the launch pad of the firm and the culture. The key, however, is it may not be 5 days a week, but it has to be a space and a place to get your gas tank filled. So if you're only coming to the office 1, 2, 3 days a week, those days have got to be so full and so energizing and educational and everything that they are getting their fix. And then they go back and they crush out their billable hours. If done properly, firms can kill it and reallocate monies being spent on technology and real estate in different ways. But that experience now coming into the office has to be better than it's ever been. 73% of firms plan to reduce their real estate in the coming years due to COVID and workplace changes, anywhere from 10% to over 50%. 41% of firms today at capacity, meaning you fill every single seat, are at 600 square feet or below. Right now, 55% of firms are targeting below 500 square feet per attorney. Single size offices are a must, shouldn't even be a discussion. For every reason, of operations to younger generations wanting to not have a hierarchy, to being able to use those offices in multiple different ways to create ultimate space flexibility. Because what if the office now is more important than ever? It is. And so the challenge now is, even though the sector may drastically change, square footages may drop, workplaces may shift, access to the office still is all about coming into work, mentor, having connectivity to their colleagues. And it really is a moment of opportunity. This should not be fearful. This is a chance to evaluate the what if scenarios, to benchmark, and then at the end of the day, to push the envelope to change to what is right for your firm, your people, and your clients. This is not a one size fits all. Everybody's going to do the same thing. And we're really seeing some firms really lead the pack. So I'm going to stop sharing now, get everybody back on for any questions, conversation you'd like to have.
Feel free to throw those into Q&A in the chat. Joan, I think, had a comment about isolation as being a really big problem for remote work. I believe that's probably true. I have to say, though, that the use of the technology has definitely eased that burden for me. I remember being a solo practitioner and feeling extremely isolated.
Right.
But different, very different experience with remote work, at least in my experience.
Well,
Landon, you're a solo.
yeah, and Joan, I think hopefully I partially answered the question with the gas tank being filled. Mentorship and training and everything, when people used to be in 5 days a week, 50, 60 hours, was a little bit more on an ad hoc basis. It definitely now needs to be in a much more organized way. So when, partners, associates, senior associates are working together, first, they got to be well coordinated and all come in on the same day. Practice group leader or senior associate and that's training needs to actually make sure that happens. It's not ad hoc anymore. They might have lunch and learns. They might have a working session of reviewing all the clients and strategies and who's doing what, where, when. But billable hours still take place behind closed doors. And that's still the majority and where you make money. So there is that balance of how do I bring forward that energy and all those things where people are getting their fix, so they're not feeling isolated. There you go, ad hoc doesn't work. And it's forcing attorneys who, generally speaking, and this is the same with brokers, what makes somebody a really good lawyer and a really good broker does not mean they're good managers. And they're not great necessarily at structure and agendas and creating content. It's, hey, you're in my office, I'm going to teach you something. So firms are hiring consultants. Firms are internally helping and coaching practice group leaders and senior associates that do training on how to do it more effectively and more systematically. So again, if done properly, and if everybody's willing to adapt a little bit, someone can come in 1 or 2 days a week, get their fix, get their training, get their collaboration, get their fulfillment, and then go back in their pajamas all day and crank out their work.
That is super interesting. I mean, that filling the gas tank analogy made me make a connection I hadn't thought of before. It's like attending a conference. It seems to me it's not your day to day. It's more of the Mitchell Hamlin has a hybrid program, but they still require, and I know a lot of the low residency programs, educational programs, have a similar setup where, yeah, we are doing a lot remote, but you have to be on campus for at least 2 weeks during the semester, because whatever the studies were showed that kind of engagement is required for academic success. It can't be all remote for some reason. And when you see the students that come on, Landon, what's it called when they come on the campus at Mitchell Hamlin? You probably know, I forget the.
Yeah, they have their, I can't remember what they're calling it, but it's 1 week of intense in person. Yeah.
and it is intense. You can, I've talked to those students during that time, and they're busy. They are hyper engaged. They're heads down into the books with their colleagues. They're getting work done, and that energy, is kind of a very interesting thing that I don't see with the students who are in the, what do they call it, the brick and mortar, the BAM program.
Well, the funny
one
thing
of their weeks is the capstone week, and then I think they have another week at the beginning that I can't think of.
Yeah. The funny thing, Mike, is, pre-COVID, lawyers argued that I have to have an office because I have to have a place where I can close the door and bill my hours. I have to, I need confidentiality. I need quiet. I need this, I need that. Well, then we'll give you that. But when you're not doing that, you should be out collaborating, interacting, training, and working with your people. But does that office need to be 240 square feet? I'm working with, and it shocked me, I'm working with a major firm. You all know that just rolled out their US workplace, and they're decided to give 100% of everyone, including legal assistants, private offices. They're 70 square feet. Why? Because they want to show their legal assistants and their paralegals that we respect you. They think it's a recruiting tool. And we're going to give you a private office. Now I'm a partner. I'm not liking the fact that I now got to get out of my chair, walk across the hallway to possibly a closed door where my assistant used to be. I could just yell out the door. But I now look at these test fits and it's like a sea of offices. And the concept is, here are all these collaborative zones where, by the way, technology, you just bring your laptop in, you can work anywhere in any square inch of our space. You want to go down to the cafe, you want to go to the rooftop, you want to come into someone's office. It's just, I'm going to do it. So why do you need 200 square feet? We're going to give you 70, and that's going to have a nice desk, dual monitors, maybe a side chair. And that's where you go in to close the door to bill your hours. But when you're out collaborating, we're going to give you all that space to have what you need to do that. So you can't have it both ways. You say you need the office to go in and hunker down and have quiet space. Well, we're going to give that to you. And if you want to go meet with people, there's 50 spots right out there that you can go do it.
And I can't remember. I think we may have started our conversation about how this might appeal to clients, and you really have to take into consideration. And I apologize. I don't know if we started that conversation after the 8 o'clock period. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So your question was, do clients, what are the expectations of clients, and will they come in and use your space? That's really case by case. There were a lot of firms that used and designed their space to have a lot of client types of spaces for training, events. They even let their clients come in and use their space, rooftops, whatever it may be. So what a lot of our clients are doing is they are reaching out to their clients and saying, this is how we worked with you previously. Is this the way you'd still like to work with us moving forward? And in some cases, they're like, you know what, we're really backing off on sending our people out, and we just don't see ourselves coming to your office as much. Well, that answers your question. On the other hand, we've had some clients who have said that their clients have either given up their offices or they plan on more remote working. And could we have an office in your space, 2 offices, 1 week a month? Well, then that totally changes how you're going to design your space as well, which is why there is not a one size fits all.
Is
you're not going to give those clients the 70 square foot office and tell them, get in the office and do your work if you want
Right.
to tell them.
But you could give them a multi-purpose Zoom room that seats 8. That's a high top with chairs around it with a big monitor, a big plasma TV screen. It has 2 club chairs and a tiny phone booth.
Are legal departments saying this is great? Of course, we want litigation counsel in here for a couple of days a week.
It really does vary from company to company. You look at, you're an IP attorney and you're going to a tech firm to service your client. You may be sitting in an open bullpen with your client versus going somewhere else where, it's corporate America and their legal department is, acting just like a law firm.
So I'm curious, we mentioned this at one point, there was a question regarding government offices and agencies. And is there anything, I'm wondering if there's anything unique problems or issues that they're running into. I mean, we're talking about the elected officials here that are overseeing organizations in some cases. And, I deal primarily in criminal defense, and, the prosecutors are going to want to be close to the courtroom still. But right. How much are they going to be able to do remotely?
Well, I think that, is hopefully going to continue to change. I know it was not an ideal situation with not being able to get to courtrooms and not physically being able to access, but I think it also forced the system to adapt itself. And they probably found that there were certain ways of streamlining that they now say, we're going to make this permanent, but the courts still matter. And if you're litigating cases and you got to get in front of a judge and a jury and everything else, yeah, that's a factor. But I will say, less and less and less and less with electronic filings and everything else, are law firms saying I need to be near the courthouse or have a small little war room facility near the courthouse that's your production, but your law firm's 8 blocks away, or maybe in suburban, wherever. It's the sky's the limit right now. And it's the firms that are saying, like, why have we just lived in this little bubble? Like, why? Well, because the partners who own the firm and are the decision makers always said, I want to keep living in this little bubble. But now they're much more open-minded, and they've found that change doesn't kill them, and that they're much more open-minded to change. So why not, explore?
Yeah, take advantage of some of these opportunities. I wonder if maybe should have done this at the beginning of the presentation, but some definitions here. We've talked about hot desking and hoteling and some of these other options. And even I'm thinking, what's the difference between a hot desk and a hoteling option? And I'm forgetting what all the terms and options folks are working with.
So I'll give you kind of the definition in the legal sector. And by the way, every other sector has been doing this for decades. The ones who did it the most successfully by far are the consulting firms. The big four firms have been doing this for 20 plus years. And by the way, we all know, particularly in Europe and Asia, who's stealing all the legal talent and legal work? The consulting firms are. And it's only a matter of time in the US that with potential law changes and everything else, they're going to keep stealing it, because they're the FedEx of operations. They figured out how to do it and how to streamline it in much more cost-effective ways, and they're making gobs of money doing it. So hoteling is where you have a set of offices. So say 30 attorneys are only coming in, 1 to 3 days a week. So they have 10 offices, 100 square feet to 150 square feet, give or take, standardized furniture, great work wall space, 2 guest chairs. And basically you're coming in and you go into a system, it's all technology based, and say, I'm going to be in next Tuesday and Thursday, or I'm going to be in every Tuesday and Thursday because you want to standardize. So they assign you an office. If you're in Tuesdays and Thursdays, more than likely it will be the same office. They will roll in your active files. Your telephone number will go with you. Your plasma TV screen, if you want your kids' photos and your family wedding, whatever it is, put up. And for that period of time, those 2 days, that's your office. And then the next week they may say, hey, we're putting you over here. They're being very considerate with attorneys, partners, and associates, where they try to put them all together if they're all going to be in on the same day. So, and that's, again, all technology driven. So there's big investments in this as well. Hot desking, however, is different. Hot desking is, I'm going to give you an office, but when you're not there, you got to lock your drawers and someone else can use it. That's what the consulting firms do. Desk sharing is more for staff. So say you've got accounting and you've got 8 cubes in an open room, that's the accounting department. And it's determined that there's, 12 people that work and there's 8 stations. If you come in Tuesdays and Thursdays, somebody else is going to sit at that desk Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's desk sharing. So we're sharing, we're all sharing. And it might be your desk, you have a file drawer, everything else, but I'm sharing this with Susie. She gets it Tuesdays and Thursdays. I get it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Remote working is obvious. It's wherever it is. It could be at their house, their vacation home, their mother's, Starbucks, whatever it may that may be. And that all requires technology, training, consistency.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm struggling to put into my head what the various setups, how that increased the technology need and why that was driving up cost. So that was helpful.
Well, as Landon said, there was the immediate blip that was just getting the equipment. I had to get another flat screen because my laptop, when I'm on full screen, I can't see other people. So I have another screen that I can actually interact with people, because that was weird. Talk about isolated. I'm presenting to 200 people and I'm looking at myself. So now by having the second screen, I was actually able to see all the people and see facial reactions and questions and things like that. I had to get a printer. I had to get a scanner. I had to get boosters of Wi-Fi in my house. I actually switched over my technology services, one that was more reliable. Our own company expanded technology and the cloud and had to train us. So it's technology, it's physical technology, it's training technology, and then it's just continued investment in new opportunities and products. And that's not going away.
What's it's not, yeah. I'm, silver linings, I guess, has been the theme for the last few. Sure. Thank you so much. It's fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm gonna, Sarah's got a last call for questions in the chat. Question from Sarah: do you consult with firms for creating business plans around hoteling and the like?
We do, and we also do confidential surveys of staff and attorneys and produce a What We Heard You Say report, because understanding what your people are really thinking, particularly confidentially, is first baseline. You want to really understand what they want, and then we need to do a deep dive into what you have, and then to figure out what is the best solution.
And then maybe, Sherry, you want to throw your contact information, whatever you're comfortable with, into the chat, and so folks.
Sure. Yeah.
CLE code.
Yep. Great. Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Have a great day.
Take care now.